On the first day of our tour with Alaska Adventures Unlimited, we had a fairly short day, but a very interesting day where we visited two Native heritage sites. First, we visited the Alaska Native Heritage Center just outside of Anchorage, and then we visited the Eklutna Native Village on the way to Wasilla. Both were quite interesting. Let me show you what we saw. So we're here at the Alaska Native Heritage Center just outside of Anchorage. This is the first day of our official tour, and this is a really cool place. It has outdoor exhibits and indoor exhibits of the five major Native Alaskan people. And I'll show you a little bit more of it in a minute. These are bones from a bowhead whale, and then you can see here across the lake, there are exhibits laid out around the lake, and then you can see the Heritage Center building across the lake. It's really nicely laid out here. Quite an interesting place to visit. And we're here on a really beautiful day in mid-June.
This wide-angle shot shows some of the lodges and houses that you can visit around the lake. Here is the interior of some of the lodges. As you can see, they are quite impressive structures. There also are many artifacts displayed within the lodges, and we were allowed to handle some of the artifacts. Of course, you'd always want to ask first, but that was interesting and unusual in my experience. There are young Native Alaskans available to explain the structures and the artifacts. This young man gave us a demonstration of how various artifacts were used for hunting and fishing. This young woman is demonstrating a drum that was made from sealskin.
This is the remains of a gray whale here at the Native Heritage Center, and here is a very well preserved kayak, and here is a canoe in more original condition. And here is a very interesting totem pole.
In the main building, there is an auditorium for giving presentations as well as a cafe. There's also an area where native crafts and goods are on display and for sale. And the sellers are always there to provide information and answer questions. We then visited a really interesting place, the Eklutna Historic Site, Churches, and Cemetery. This site shows the melding of the Native and Russian cultures. According to Alaska.org, Russian Orthodox missionaries arrived in the late 18th century and began converting the Native Alaskans to the Russian Orthodox religion. This led to a fusing of the cultures, as we would learn. There are two churches on the property. The old church dates from approximately 1894 and is currently not open to the public. The new church was built in 1962 and of course is of Russian Orthodox style. The inside of the church has beautiful iconography, and there was a young lady who gave us a very informative talk about the churches and the cemetery. The melding of the cultures is reflected in the spirit houses in the cemetery. We were told that the native people used cremation for the dead, but the Russian Orthodox missionaries preferred burial. So the Native Alaskans agreed to burial, but in sort of a melding of the cultures or as a compromise, began constructing these spirit houses for the dead. Here is the grave and spirit house for Chief Alex, one of the chiefs of the local people. One of the most elaborate spirit houses marks the resting place of Gil and Marie Rosenberg. According to Gil's obituary, he started life in New York City, found his way to Alaska, went to work for the railroad and then the Army, met Marie, and they raised 4 children. They apparently had a good life and were very well respected in the community. In the ultimate melding of cultures, the Star of David is on the marker, but obviously Gil and Marie were part of this church and part of this community as well.
We really enjoyed our time at both of these sites, and we learned a little bit about the native Alaskan culture. We recognized that we barely scratched the surface and there's so much more to learn. But if you're going to travel somewhere, I think it's a good idea to try to at least learn a little bit about the culture of the place you're visiting. And I thought both places are really interesting. If you want to learn generally about Native Alaskan culture, then the Cultural Heritage Center is probably the best stop, but the Eklutna Village was just fascinating. Now, I've tried to get the facts stated in this video correctly, but I may have made a mistake, and if I did, it certainly wasn't intentional. If you want to correct anything in the comments, that's fine. Please be respectful. And again, fascinating visits.